Welcome everybody, today I wanted to take a look at upcoming video games that are still a bit further away, but which should definitely stay on your radar. I chose a mix of games from different genres with different budgets and scale to try to find something for more than just myself. So let's look at games coming out in 2026 and beyond. Let's start with Phantom Blade Zero, because it's a game that does not have a release date, but I actually played it at Gamescom last year, so there is a slight chance that it may get a 2025 release date. No news on that yet, so hopefully it'll still fit the narrative. Phantom Blade Zero is a reboot of the Phantom Blade series, and it's inspired by movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once and John Wick series, even though the setting is a mix of Chinese mythology and steampunk with some occult elements. You play as Soul, an elite assassin who first gets framed for murder, then gets lethally injured, and finally, through the powers of a mystical healer, he gets 66 days to find the actual killer. The game is in third person with combat focused mostly on melee weapons. The structure of the game is inspired by Dark Souls, but in its lighter form. For example, once you die, you will come back to life at a respawn point, but the regular enemies will not respawn back. The important part of the game will be boss fights, which will be challenging, but when you beat them, you actually get to take their weapons and use them by yourself. I had a lot of fun playing this game and I can't wait for more, so hopefully it will come out soon, early 2026 to fit this video. Frostrail is a pretty fresh announcement, and it's definitely something for the fans of open-world survival games with optional co-op elements. And if you like the train aspect of Metro Exodus, or you're a fan of the movie and show Snowpiercer, you'll feel at home. You play in a frozen world in which the Emperor made a pact with the Void. As a result, the land is haunted by very Lovecraftian horrors. You get on board of an armored, steam-powered train and explore the frozen wasteland. You'll need to gather things to survive, fuel the train's engine, manage its power, keep reinforcing the cars, craft new stations to get better weapons. Generally, it sounds pretty cool if you like trains and winter. The game doesn't have a release date yet, although Steam says that the expected release date is 2026 and the game will actually launch in early access. Now I need to find myself some friends to play this with. No way I'm trying to play anything even remotely scary by myself. And since I don't want anything scary anymore, let's move to a game that fuels its fantasy world with humor. Fable is a series that started in 2004 with the first game developed by Lionhead Studios, who are also famous for Black&White. And we need a playable version of Black&White on modern PCs, please, please, please make it happen. First rumors about a new Fable started in 2017 with official confirmation about the development happening in 2020. In 2023 we got the first look at the game, and last year during Xbox Games Showcase another trailer was shown and the game was supposed to be released in 2025. However, in February it was announced that the release window is moving to 2026, so fans who really want to get back to Albion will need to wait a bit more. What is Fable though? Well, not much is known about this game specifically, apart from the fact that it will be heavily grounded in what Fable always was, a fantasy open world in which you complete missions, you can be a good or bad character, and because of your actions, your reputation in the world will change. Combat will be a mix of melee, ranged, and magic, and you can definitely expect a lot of humor, and you can see it in the trailers who employ, well, funny people. The most surprising thing for me is the fact that the game is made by Playground Games, which is the studio that makes Forza Horizon. Apparently the game is supposed to be using the same engine and we'll have to wait till next year to see how it turns out. I personally really want to come back to the world of Fable. I had a lot of fun there. Time to move on to a game that visually blew pretty much everyone away when it was first shown. Replaced. This one's been on the back of my mind for a while now. It got announced back in 2021 with a whole lot of hype, partly because, well, just look at it. It's a really great looking pixel art. But what is Replaced? Imagine a really gritty, alternative 1980s America, think Blade Runner or classic cyberpunk vibes, but with this incredibly unique visual aesthetic. You play as Reach, an AI that's been trapped against its will inside a human body. You're dropped into the decaying, corrupt Phoenix City and have to figure out how to navigate this world, understand your situation, and fight for survival. The whole atmosphere just oozes that retro-futuristic dystopian feel. Gameplay-wise, it's described as a 2.5D sci-fi retro-futuristic cinematic platformer. That means you can expect, platforming challenges mixed with what looks like fluid, free-flow combat. The trailers show off combos and some pretty stylish finishers. It feels less like a standard pixel platformer and more like an action-adventure game focused on atmosphere and telling a dark, engaging story, all wrapped up in those stunning visuals. I kind of hope it will hook me up as hard as Katana Zero did back in the day. We'll see about that. Honestly, the biggest thing for me was always the incredible art style. It's pixel art, yes, not everyone is a fan, but this comes with a level of detail, dynamic lighting, and cinematic camera work that just makes it look absolutely fantastic. The game already experienced a few delays, mostly due to the war in Ukraine, and the most recent info is that the release date is planned for 2026. I honestly can't wait. Alright, now how about that surprise From Software reveal with the Duskbloods? Everyone was absolutely mind-blown during the recent Nintendo Direct that From Software is doing another exclusive, this time for Switch 2. Now, the first thing that hits you is the look. It's got a bit of that Bloodborne gothic vibe, but then throws in crazy stuff like jetpacks and firearms, alongside the usual grim monsters. It looks like a pretty wild mix, and it's due to the fact that the game has no fixed era or location. You play as a super-powered Bloodsworn, apparently fighting other players and tough enemies for something called the First Blood. Gameplay also sounds like a pretty big shift for FromSoft. It's an 8-player PvPvE, meaning you're battling both other players and AI threats simultaneously. You can expect intense action with unique powers, the jetpacks I mentioned, guns, and over a dozen preset characters rather than a full custom build you do on your own. What's interesting is that while in most cases it's going to be the last man standing kind of gameplay, there will be instances where victory conditions are different and players might need to team up to defeat a powerful boss, for example. Honestly, I'm really curious to see how From Software pulls off this heavy multiplayer focus while keeping that unique atmosphere they're known for. Miyazaki pointed out, however, that they're not done with single-player games, and this is just something different they felt like doing. The current plan is for a 2026 release, and as I mentioned, it's going to be an exclusive for Nintendo Switch 2. One of the greatest bullet hells is coming back with the recently announced Enter the Gungeon 2, although it went through a huge change. While the original game was a pixel art game in 2D with top-down perspective, and I gotta say, pretty good-looking pixel art, the sequel is going full 3D with an even more colorful art style. Once again, we will battle through areas, some of them apparently familiar to the players of the original, while using a wide arsenal of unusual weaponry within the procedurally generated halls of Gungeon. Some people are worried because of the change to 3D, but at the same time, I see lots of positive buzz around the internet about Enter the Gungeon finally coming back after making a slight detour with Exit the Gungeon developed for Apple Arcade. There's still lots to be seen about the game, but what we know for sure is that the game is coming to Steam in 2026 and Nintendo Switch 2 as well. These days, if you think about Marvel characters in video games, you mostly think of Spider-Man from Insomniac Games. And you might remember that they actually announced a game centered around Wolverine. Seriously, the studio that nailed Spider-Man taking on Logan, that sounds very good. That first teaser back in 2021 definitely gave off a more mature vibe, hinting that we might finally get the gritty, possibly M-rated Wolverine game many fans have wanted for years. You know, full-on claws, intense combat, maybe some gore. We don't have much official story info yet, but eagle-eyed fans spotted the Princess Bar in the teaser, which is a huge nod to the lawless island of Madripoor, a classic spot for Wolverine in the comics. Insomniac confirmed that it's a standalone story, but interestingly, it is set in the same universe as their Spider-Man games. I think it would be a hugely missed opportunity not to have the friendly neighborhood fly killer cross paths with Wolverine. No gameplay has been officially shown, although there were some gameplay leaks from a very early version of the game. But since this all came from a hack, I don't think it's appropriate to show it further and make assumptions based on that early version, well, an in-development version. This time, Insomniac has different kinds of challenges than with Spider-Man, as fluid traversal will not be as important as more grounded combat movement. I think this game will be closer to Batman Arkham games instead of Spider-Man, but I'm really curious to see what Insomniac manages to squeeze out of this classic character. No official release date yet, but I think it's high time to get this game, don't you think? So I assume 2026 on PS5 and some time later on PC. Hopefully. Let's move from superheroes to zombies in a long-lasting series that most Microsoft fans probably know. State of Decay 3 was originally announced in 2020, but a lot of silence surrounded the game till another trailer came out in 2024. There's still not a lot of definitive information on the game, but some things remain unchanged. It's an open-world survival game set after a zombie apocalypse that nearly wiped out entire humanity. This will most probably be equally solo and co-op experience, depending on your preferences. You'll start a community from scratch in a shared shared persistent world with other players. You'll get to build, develop, and expand the base that should be pretty customizable. Based on the trailers, players expect zombified wildlife, and we can still expect permadeath feature to be the case. State of Decay 3 is still being made by Undead Labs, this time fully owned Microsoft studio. It's apparently done on Unreal Engine 5 with the help of Gears of War devs. No specific release date yet, but, well, that's why it's on today's list. Do you think people still want zombie games? This one actually has me interested personally. Exodus, the new sci-fi RPG from Archetype Entertainment. The studio is packed with ex-Bioware talent, and since Mass Effect is my jam, then this is reason enough for me to be curious about this game. For marketing purposes, they even got Matthew McConaughey involved, and he appears in the game as well, apparently in a significant role. In Exodus, we are in a distant future where humanity, after fleeing a dying Earth, has established a new home in the Centauri cluster, facing lots of challenges. You will play as June, either male or female, and you come from a very established family in the game world. Unfortunately, you have a brother who is an absolute prick and who will, in a way, be an antagonist here. You will get some superpowers, but I won't get deep into the lore to explain it in detail. It is pretty complicated. To be fair, the more I read on the game, the more similarities to Mass Effect I saw, even with things like Gates of Heaven being curiously similar to mass relays, but I don't mind. Archetype Entertainment is sharing a lot of information on the game, so if you're interested, make sure to look over their website. Or if you'd like good summaries, then I recommend watching Mr. Holthan's videos on the game. No specific date for Exodus yet, but according to the earnings call by Hasbro, the game is slated for 2026 release. You might not yet recognize this title, but Saros was revealed quite recently during Sony's State of Play. It's a sci-fi action roguelike that in a way might be reminiscent of the studio's previous game, Returnal. The developers from Housemarque only gave us the announcement trailer and not a lot of info to go by, but apparently we'll learn more this year. The game follows the haunting story of a lost off-world colony under an ominous eclipse. That's what they say. You play as Arjun Devraj, I hope I pronounced that right, and you seem to be stuck in some time loop, and that is always the easiest way of explaining the roguelike gameplay. And yet it works every time. The creative director also explained that while the game builds on Returnal, Saros will actually offer more long-term progression systems, and it will have permanent resource progression in order to make the protagonist stronger after every run. I'm quite curious to see how they plan to up their game, since Returnal was actually pretty cool. I'm not super good at these kinds of games, but I managed to finish Returnal, so I guess Saros will share the same fate. Speaking of time, I have to bring back the remake of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. The remake was originally announced in 2020 and it was spearheaded by Ubisoft's Indian studios. Even bits of gameplay and behind-the-scenes footage were shown.
How did you...
Some people say time is like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction.
But don't get too attached to it, a lot has changed behind the scenes and the project moved to Ubisoft Montreal instead. It means that the remake was getting a remake. In 2024, during Ubisoft Forward, a teaser was shown with a release date set for 2026. Since we haven't seen any details yet, we can only base our information on a short interview given last year. The team back then was already in full production, they focused a lot on making big changes to the character, camera, and controls. The original game was put through 4 core pillars when doing a remake. Sanctifying, meaning keeping elements as they were. Respecting, which was fixing it just a little bit. Modernizing it meant that it required more change, or adding something completely new to the game. Something they highlighted as important to modernize was the character of Farah. The devs mentioned that she lacked agency and depth as a person, so now she's a bit pimped up into a true companion with reasons to be there, with her own backgrounds, wants, needs, and desires. What that actually means we'll probably know next year. I really hope it sticks close to the original, because I really love the Prince of Persia trilogy. So let's see what Ubisoft comes up with. Fans of military games should be happy that ArmA 4 is actually officially confirmed to be coming in 2027, even though the game hasn't really been talked about in that much detail. Well, almost no detail. There was a video called Road to ArmA 4 that mostly showcases past games before giving a glimpse at the logo of the 4th game, but the actual teaser for ArmA 4 was shown during Bohemia Interactive's 25th anniversary concert, confirming the release year. But what do we actually know about the game? Well, to be fair, not a lot. ArmA Reforger, a side project of sorts that launched in early access in 2022, was indeed a bit of a sidestep and was mostly there as a creative platform to test the engine that will be used in ArmA 4. So we can expect the game to heavily utilize the tech and maybe some of the assets from Reforger, while at the same time Reforger is basically there to polish as much as possible under the hood before ArmA 4 finds its way to players' PCs. I know that's not a lot to go on, but fans of tactical military shooters probably won't want to miss this one. With the recent success of Silent Hill 2 Remake, I think fans of the series still have something to wait for, and there's Silent Hill F incoming, and we already had a first glimpse at the game. The game is developed by Neobards Entertainment, and that's the team that previously helped with lots of Capcom's projects like Resident Evil Resistance, Resident Evil Reverse, or DMC HD Collection. Their new game is actually set in the 60s in a small Japanese town, and it will tell the story of a high school student. Apparently we can expect a really heavy story because Steam page of the game says that there will be depictions of discrimination, violence, bullying, drug-induced hallucinations, and torture, among others. Please YouTube, do not shadow ban this video, I'm only reading what's in the mature content description of this game. There is no specific release date yet, but system requirements were actually shown and we could theoretically get it this year. But I think that there's still actually a while before this game is released. We'll see. The game is coming to PC and both Sony and Microsoft's consoles. Okay, obviously we can't talk about the upcoming games worth waiting for without the new Witcher game. So far, the only thing we got was a cinematic announcement trailer that already told us a lot. The game will feature Ciri as the main protagonist, and she will be a proper Witcher with all the mutations, cat eyes, but also sprinkled with her own magic abilities. We know that Geralt will be returning in some form, but we don't know how much yet. The game is supposed to take us mostly to areas which we haven't visited yet through the 3 Witcher games, somewhere higher up north in the continent. We can expect new tools at Ciri's disposal, for example the chain that she has in the trailer, and apparently monster hunting will get much love to be more enjoyable than before. Apart from that, we can expect the usual: mature story, serious themes, and not a lot of black and white choices. For the first time in CDPR's history in the mainline games, the game is not using their own engine, but instead they went with Unreal Engine 5. Since the game entered full production only pretty recently, there's still 2-3 years of development ahead of the studio, so it's safe to assume that 2027 is a potential candidate for a release date. I don't expect a lot to be shown for a while still, especially that the studio learned not to overhype things with how the promo for Cyberpunk 2077 went, but I don't believe we won't get something this year. I mean, come on, they already announced it. I can't wait to see a proper glimpse of the gameplay, even though I'm seriously waiting for the sequel to Cyberpunk as well, but that one is even further away. Speaking of games being made in Poland, there's another game worth your attention, and that's The Blood of Dawnwalker done by Rebel Wolves, a studio partially consisting of people who worked on The Witcher 3. The Blood of Dawnwalker is supposed to be the first chapter in a new RPG saga from the studio. The game is set in 14th century Europe, but it's not a historic medieval game. Instead, it's the world where vampires come out of hiding to assume control of the people in the land. In the game, you'll play as Cohen, who is a Dawnwalker, someone in between a regular person and a vampire. This means that you are able to exist as a human during the day, but you do have some special vampire powers. You're kind of like Blade, but without Wesley Snipes. One of the most interesting concepts in this game is time. The protagonist will have 30 days and 30 nights to save his family. However, the clock will not be ticking constantly, you will be free to explore the world as you please, but completing quests will actually move the time forward. Apparently, the game is supposed to communicate that to the player clearly, whether some actions move time forward and by how much. This sounds pretty intriguing, and I can't wait to find out some more. The reveal of the game consisted mostly of a cinematic trailer with a super short glimpse at gameplay, but I think more is expected this year. No release date yet, but I think 2026 sounds like a good guess. Other Side Entertainment. The name of the studio probably doesn't tell you much, but you might recognize the name Warren Spector. The team is currently working on a game called Thick as Thieves, which is a multiplayer stealth PvPvE game set in the 1910s in the city of Ordine, and apparently it's inspired by the classics like Thief and Deus Ex. Your task is to be the best thief out there in a world that combines industry with magic. The player will take on the role of a master thief, a member of the Thieves Guild, and go on missions to steal wealth, earn prestige, and escape with loot. In their announcement, I liked the phrase that this is the time to steal from the rich and give to yourself. You will encounter guards patrolling the area, you will find traps and enchanted eyes, which is probably basically cameras. It'll be important to search for clues, find weak points, watch out for patrols, and pickpocket for keys. Apparently, the game will give a big freedom of choice in terms of gameplay with a variety of available equipment. The tricky part is the fact that you not only need to steal the loot, but you have to make sure that other players don't steal it from you. I'm not the biggest fan of the art style of the game, but the concept seems pretty interesting, and I want to try it out when it releases. And at the moment, it seems we need to wait until 2026 when it comes out on PC and consoles. This game caught my attention last year at Xbox Games Showcase, but it was actually announced back in 2020. Perfect Dark is actually a reboot of the series with the same name, and it's developed by The Initiative in cooperation with Crystal Dynamics. Perfect Dark is a first-person shooter that draws inspiration from immersive sims and stealth games. It looked pretty damn cool with its city design and tools that the main character, Joanna Dark, can use. For example, you have a tool that can mimic enemy voices and open voice-coded locks or distract other enemies. You have melee combat, you can use firearms, there's parkour in the game, you even have tech that allows you to see through walls. I mean, this looks pretty damn cool. Apparently, the development of the game has been really troubled, partly due to the pandemic, but also due to management issues. The game was initially developed on Unreal Engine 4, but in 2022 they moved to UE5, and the coalition is supporting both studios with their expertise with the engine. I really hope that this game comes to life. I enjoyed the gameplay trailer so much. No specific release date, but I think it's safe to say it's not 2025. Since I already mentioned the Coalition, I can't not talk about Gears of War E-Day. It's a game that serves as a prequel to the whole Gears of War series, and it's focused once again on Marcus Phoenix, the protagonist, and the brotherhood between him and Dom Santiago. Since the game takes place 14 years before the original game, this gives a chance to show a different take on the main character. The story of the game will focus on a single moment in time during the so-called Emergence Day, in order to tell an intimate story exploring how a desperate civilization that's not prepared for anything like this reacts to a nearly unstoppable apocalypse. This game is supposed to up the horror to a slightly bigger level and also come back to the original, more linear concept of the game compared to the newer game's more open-world type of gameplay. Gears of War E-Day will be set in a new location for the franchise, but developers see this as a good occasion to tell lots of cool small stories, for example about the origin of the iconic Lancer assault rifle. The game is heading to PC and Xbox, most probably as day one release and Game Pass, but there's no indication of a release date yet. This game has a very unusual vibe, and it is probably something that fans of Thief, Dishonored, and BioShock will like, at least in theory, and it reminds me a bit of We Happy Few. In Welcome to Brightville, you play as a unique automaton who, for some reason, is not controlled by the evil AI that keeps the city in its grasp. It's a steampunk world mixed with magic that has an absolutely fantastic atmosphere with its dark street mixed with bright and colorful lights. We're supposed to get a living, reactive world that will respond to our actions, unique NPCs that will have deep storylines dependent on the choices that we make, and a freedom of playing either in a stealthy manner, going guns blazing, or more like magic blazing, or actually manipulating others. Our automaton will use offensive and defensive spells that can be combined, and that actually reminds me a bit of Immortals of Avium. The interesting bit is that music is part of the game world, and our actions are emphasized by the soundtrack. Some characters sing and thus incorporate musical elements into the story. I mean, you can hear it in the gameplay trailer. It looks absolutely wacky, and I want to play it just because of that. As is the case with most of the games today, no release date yet, but the game is heading to PC and consoles. To finish things off, I have a new IP coming from Naughty Dog, the creators of Uncharted and The Last of Us. This one is headed in a completely different direction because Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, is set about 2,000 years into the future, even though it has this bit of an analog vibe. And that's because it's an alternate universe where space travel already existed in 1986. You play as Jordan A. Moon, a bounty hunter stranded on a remote planet and apparently fighting hostile robots with big blades. The creators mentioned that while making this game, they were taking inspiration from Akira and Cowboy Bebop, and that definitely shows. The score for the game is composed by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and the trailer itself was accompanied by the song by Pet Shop Boys. For some reason, the trailer was super heavy on the real-life products, with Sony CD player, Porsche-branded spaceship, and Jordan wearing Adidas sneakers. I wonder what that's all about. And why not Jordans? Now, apparently the game still has ways to go when it comes to development, but this is supposed to launch the studio's first new IP since 2013 when The Last of Us 1 came out. Obviously, the game is heading to PS5 and maybe to PC in the future. I'm always excited for established studios coming up with new IPs, so I'm definitely waiting for more info, especially since it seems it'll be much more melee focused than their previous games, so that's a new challenge to tackle at Naughty Dog. And this game actually closes the list of 20 upcoming games beyond 2025 that are worth keeping on your radar. Obviously, I can't promise these games will be amazing, but at the moment they sound interesting enough to at least keep watching for more news coming about these games. Obviously, I didn't mention everything that's out there. We still have The Elder Scrolls 6 that was supposed to be Bethesda's next game after Starfield, and I think it's high time to hear something more about this game. There's the remake of Max Payne 1 and 2 that Remedy is working on, and that sounds really exciting seeing how well Remedy is doing recently. There's Assassin's Creed Hexe, already announced that it's supposed to show a very dark and mystical Europe, probably connected somehow to witchcraft. And then there's Squadron 42, a single-player component to Star Citizen that is supposed to be out in 2026, but it was supposed to be out multiple times already, so I'll believe it when I see it. And maybe GTA 6 should be on the list if Take-Two decides that Rockstar won't make it this year with their game. Surely there is more than that. I'm curious to hear from you what games releasing after 2025 are worth waiting for. Share your suggestions in the comments. I'm really interested in what I missed. Thank you for sticking till the end, and take care.